Alright, we are on take 5 bazillion for this because it's a difficult topic to talk about, so be nice in the comments. And understand that I'm doing this because I believe that there needs to be as many voices out there that speak towards the reality of, you know, being gay and in a society that doesn't always support us. And so this video is really for those who are struggling with the possibility that you might be gay, especially if you're somebody that's growing up religious. So let's go ahead and get down to it, and I'm going to go ahead and start with my own personal journey, because I think that's a very important journey to talk about. Wrestling was really my, and I do know that this is a gay wrestling channel, and that you want me to talk about wrestling, but because it is also a gay channel, so I want to really make sure that we are covering the gay aspect of it as well. As I kind of said in the transgender video that I did about a month ago, that studies have kind of shown that it is not a choice to be gay or transgender. What they found with the transgender studies was that there are male and female brain shapes that develop that certain areas of the brain tend to be more developed in women than they do in men, and vice versa, and that that when somebody is transgender, they tend to have a brain shape that is more akin to the gender that they are choosing rather than their birth gender. And that might be more of the explanation of why we have trans people in the first place. And when we look at gay people, most of the gay studies have been done entirely with men, so sorry women. And what they've kind of found, or what they found, is that they're looking at twin studies, and there's always that question of nature versus nurture. Why are we gay? And what they found is that birth order matters, so you're less likely to be gay if you are a first child. The later down the road that you are, the more likely it is that you're going to be gay. But the other thing is, especially if you're consecutive males, and then what they also like to look at are the twin studies. And the twin studies want to look at identical twins and non-identical twins, but they pay more attention to the identical twins, particularly those who are separated at birth. And what they found is that the more genetically identical twins are, keeping in mind that there's no such thing as a truly identical twin. When you look at their genetic code, there's going to always be some slight variance here and there, but for the most part, they are sharing embryos, they're sharing genetic tissue, so there's going to be a lot of overlap, and it can be like 99.9% identical, but there's still always going to be that 0.1% that's going to be a variance. So what they found is that the more identical twins are, the more likely they're going to share a sexual orientation, and especially even if they are separated at birth. So there's not really that nurture aspect in those when they're looking at it that way. So we do believe that it is a genetic thing. As far as the outliers go, there might be more religious conservatism that's happening with the ones that don't identify as gay. It could be that there might be a nurturing element that allows people to come out, but then when we look at the psychological aspects of that, which where we have done conversion therapy in the past, we've done religious praying to try to change your sexual orientation in the past. I went through that to a certain extent, not maybe as aggressive as going off to a scare away the gay kind of camp or anything like that, but psychologists have now condemned the idea that you can change somebody's sexual orientation, because people end up with more instances of extreme depression, more occurrences of suicide, more occurrences of just general signs of poor mental health. So, so trying to change somebody's sexual orientation is not generally something that is very good, and I discovered that myself. So my personal story is that, I kind of discovered wrestling before I discovered my sexuality. I was developing my spandex fetish in about junior high, maybe a little bit earlier than that. I remember being 8 years old and doing gymnastics and really wanting to try on the spandex gymnastics shorts at the time. I remember the wrestling mural that was in my gymnasium in my junior high, which had two guys in wrestling singlets, and one of them had a very nice ass. And I was very attracted to that. And I discovered in high school PWP, BG East, Can-Am, and at that point in time, this is 2000 to 2003, I was mostly just looking at images because there weren't really videos at that time online. And if you did find them, they were very low quality, and I was staying up late at night looking at pornographic wrestling videos. And then I got into college and I started to explore more, and then I realized that I was finding the male form a lot more attractive than the female form. I never had a girlfriend, still haven't to this day. I still have my gay gold star, although, there's probably, maybe 5% of all the women that I meet, or 1% or something, some really low number that I find attractive and that I could potentially be sexually active with, but I've just never had really the desire to follow that, right? Because, I am gay. So I came out as bisexual to my parents in college, and I was, through my mom's church, hooked up with a ex-lesbian who was twice my age, mid-40s, who successfully prayed away her gay. And what I found was that she was a very lonely woman who still visited lesbian bars because that loneliness was so overwhelming for her. She had not been able to find a man or really had much interest in looking, so she basically became celibate in order to try to deny her nature, really. So it can't really be changed. So when we look at this, because like I said, I was raised Christian, I am agnostic now, and I don't necessarily, I'm not like an atheist who wants to prove to you that your religion is false. But I think that you need to consider the source of your self-hate in a realistic light, in a historical light. So when we look at the Bible throughout history, the Bible is basically a descendant of an ancient religion called Zoroastrianism. I've heard it pronounced both Zoroastrianism as well as Zoroastrianism, that basically split off into Islam and Judaism. And the way that, despite like that split happening and having those books be fairly different in today's edition, both of those religions, the way that they're practiced, is that it is considered an abomination to translate the Quran into any language other than its original text. And those who are Islamic, study the original text as it was written, or as they believe it was written today. And it has been for hundreds, if not thousands of years, been done that way. And the same thing is true with the Torah. The Jews will actually learn Hebrew in order to read the Torah. This is a commonly known fact. So why is that important? Well, we don't read the Bible in the same way. We don't try to read the Latin that the New Testament might have been written in. We don't try to read the Greek or the Hebrew that the Old Testament was going to be written in. We basically rely on other people's translations, and the most ancient version, the closest to the original text that is commonly found, is the King James Version. Why is it called the King James Version? Because King James wanted to control his society, so he actually commissioned a translation of the Bible that will create a subservient population. And so that version of the Bible was tainted. It was kind of altered and manipulated by the King James in order to control his society. We might say, well, that's ancient history. We can still follow it to this day because people don't do that today. Well, I was raised, Lutheran, which is King James Version, and then evangelical. And Christians generally don't try to, go back to the ancient text because that is too difficult for them to read. So instead they go to the modern translations of the Bible, which are not great, because there is a guy who still exists today. We've all heard of Billy Graham and all that, but there was a guy named James Dobson who I believe founded the 700 Club. He created programs called Focus on the Family, and he had I believe the New International Version of the Bible is James Dobson's version of the Bible. And he translated the Bible in a way that supported the idea of women being subservient to their husbands, so there was misogynist. He translated it in a way that made it heteronormative, and he is translating it in order to push his own agenda, just like King James did. And a lot of what we're seeing today, as far as the toxicity that we're seeing in the far right, is coming out of that culture and that approach to the Bible. So we are looking at the modern versions of the Bible as being these vehicles for toxic religion. And so there are other churches, such as Unitarian, and what are called more light churches, like the one that's founded by Jack Rogers. And he was somebody that grew up believing that homosexuality was a sin, and eventually turned around and said, well, why do we believe this? And he wanted to look back at what the Bible actually says. And he wrote Jesus, the Bible, and Homosexuality. And the first couple chapters in here look at how the Bible was used to justify slavery, how it was used to justify misogyny, and then how it's used to justify homophobia. And then it looks at the different books of the Bible and what they actually say. So when we look at Exodus, well, we have the Ten Commandments. God doesn't bother to bring up homosexuality in the Ten Commandments at all. When we look at the Holiness Code, which is your Leviticus, Deuteronomy, there's a translation issue between those and Ruth, where there are two words that don't appear contextually anywhere else in the language. Like, there is no ancient text that mentions these two words, that we don't know what they mean, and they have been presumed to mean homosexuality. And so in modern translations, they mean gay, but there's no context for that, historically speaking. So we have absolutely no idea what those words mean. And then when we look at the Holiness Code, why do we eat shrimp today? Why do we have synthetic fibers that are blends and whatnot? Why are we blending our fabrics? Why are we planting two crops next to each other of different species? Or why are we not selling off our daughters? Well, because the Holiness Code was part of a early constitution, right? These were the laws of an early society, but there's no mention of Moses going back to God after receiving the Ten Commandments and being like, okay, what are the laws for our new society that we've just created after we left Egypt? Oh, here they are. No, those were not handed down by God. There's no mention of that. So the Holiness Code doesn't hold up today, but there's also, Jesus references that and says we are throwing out the old covenants because Jesus came to change all that. And then, of course, in the time that Jesus lives, as far as what is documented, he never once mentions homosexuality. He clarifies things like divorce and things like that, but he never mentions homosexuality at all. So, it wasn't important enough for Jesus to mention. It does come up again with, I believe, Paul's letters to the Roman Church, to the Romans, in the book of Romans, Romans 26. And but in there, it is actually contextually believed that what is being talked about there is not consensual homosexual relationships, but rather that it's idolatry, putting your relationships as being more meaningful than your relationship with God. So, take that for what you will. Jack Rogers probably actually makes a much better argument on that, and other people probably do at some point in time. He's Presbyterian, apparently. And then there's, of course, Sodom and Gomorrah. And if you look at that and reread that several times over, as I did, from the King James Version, or any version probably, what you see is that these were an unruly mob that were descending upon the house of Lot in order to rape and murder the two visitors to that town. And it's actually clarified later in the Bible that the sin of Sodom was hospitality, not consensual homosexual relationships. So what does the Bible actually say about homosexuality? Not a damn thing. There are some passages in the Bible, particularly regarding King David and Solomon, I believe, where, or King Solomon and David's relationship, that they loved each other as their own skin, and there are, kind of this, homoerotic implications to those passages of the Bible. These were people that were very, very well favored by God. And so, the question is that, okay, and I'm going to go into, why I am agnostic, right? Is that, when I listen to people like Stephen Fry, who is a very vocal atheist, he says that, why would all-loving God allow the Holocaust or something like that? And there's been other people who've made a very similar point here, and so I hope I'm not misappropriating this to the wrong person, but either it was Neil deGrasse Tyson as well, that says that, either God is all-powerful, all-loving, all-good, and so how can an all-powerful, all-loving, all-good God allow something like the Holocaust? And there's only a few questions to that. Is either he is not all-powerful, therefore he does not have the power to change and stop an event like the Holocaust, or he's not all good and not all loving. And there are plenty of other things like Hotel Rwanda. I know that's the name of a movie, but that was an actual event of genocide. What's happening between Israel right now and Hamas and all that, and Palestine, right? That conflict God is allowing, and he's not doing anything to stop it, so, either God doesn't have the power to stop it, or he wants it to happen. And you can't have it two ways. I believe in free will, and I believe that we have certain things, but there's certain things where I feel that there is a level of sacredness to things. And the fact that God has allowed or been unable to stop multiple versions of the Bible to exist, that he allows that for multiple religions to exist. There is no evidence-based reason to be Christian. There really isn't. There is no evidence-based reason to be Jewish, or Islamic, or Buddhist, or any religion. So you have to take it on faith. Well, if the punishment for choosing the wrong religion is hell, is death, and if God actually loves us, then why isn't he pointing us in the right direction? Why is he allowing, some starving kid in Africa to never come across the Bible? If you have to accept Jesus as your Savior, we are born in sin. If you don't get baptized, as in the Catholic religion, you don't get baptized, then you can actually, and you die from sins or anything else, then that baby who hasn't had the opportunity to sin but was born into original sin can go to hell. What about all these people that have never had access to Christianity? Yeah, we sometimes send missionaries out there, but oftentimes these people still, they only have so much reach. So there are always going to be people who have never seen it, or were raised Buddhist, or were raised Islamic, or were raised in another religion, and therefore aren't going to accept Christianity, that aren't going to look at Jesus. Why isn't God intervening in those people's lives? Why is this not the most popular prevailing religion in the world? So there's like kind of an ethical conundrum there, right? Where your religion is, there's no reason to believe any one version of the religion. There's no reason for people to, by evidence, choose this. So God is basically allowing the Holocaust to happen while also allowing people to have their non-existent faith be tested, right? Because they have never been presented with compelling evidence to tell them to follow this religion. And so that is inherently, in my mind, unethical. And that is why I'm agnostic. It's not that I don't believe that there's a God. I believe that it's highly unlikely that there was some random explosion in the middle of the universe and then dust went out through and the elements went out through the universe, and eventually you get, life that just suddenly develops. And that, you can put all the ingredients to life into a test tube and life will still not form, right? If it's in a sterile environment. So, evolution to me, I feel is kind of, and I hate to get too philosophical about my own personal beliefs here, but I just find it highly unlikely. I find the formation of the universe highly unlikely. But it's the same problem is, where does the Higgs boson particle come from? Where does that initial singularity come from? And I think it's a cheap cop-out to say that non-existence, nothingness is inherently unstable. I think that's bullshit. But at the same time, the idea that God exists and came from nowhere is also highly unlikely, and that is the human condition, is that really our existence is highly improbable. So you have zero evidence that there is an afterlife. You have zero evidence that you are going to be reincarnated. You have zero evidence of God or even the soul. So what is guaranteed to you? Well, what's guaranteed to you is that you can't change your sexuality. As humans, we do not know how to make that happen without causing major psychological harm. It is considered abuse to try to say change your sexuality. And I don't care what so-called, former homosexuals say, you're lying to yourself. And that has been scientifically proven. That we create more instances of suicide, more instances of depression by trying to change someone's sexuality. We create more pain, more suffering than we need to. And so what we found is that by accepting who you are, by allowing yourself to be gay, you are allowing yourself to have a much better mental health than you would have otherwise. So, if nothing else is guaranteed, then guarantee your own happiness now. Be gay, be accepting of those who are around you. Reject transphobia, because it's been proven that trans people deserve to exist or are going to exist, and that it's not their choice. We know these things. So be you. Don't listen to, what other people say. If your church says that it's not okay for you to be gay and you're not, ready to give up on your church, then find a more like church. They exist. There are going to be gay affirming churches, and they are going to love you for who you are. And so be you, whatever that means for you. Because this is the only life that is guaranteed. And there's no reason for you to suffer it. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for tolerating that I would dare do a video on this particular topic, because, but I do feel that it needs to be said. It needs to be said by absolutely everyone until it is well known that you are who you are, and that's okay. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I think this is the best take, so I think this is the one that's going to go up. So, thank you guys.